one job, this will horrify you, but it's the truth. Should it be criminalized? No, I don't think it should. Literally head to toe in religious garments. He failed to stop. He caused millions of pounds in damage, and they found the child in the bathroom. Welcome. This is a brand new channel, Black Belt Barrister Off the Record. A bit of an experiment, a little bit to potentially please some that want to get the politics off my main channel and get the law back on there. But also, I can be a little bit more free if I totally segregate this completely with my political views and what I think about what's going on. So here we are on Black Belt Barrister Off the Record. Please do subscribe. We'll see how it goes. And I might revert Black Belt Secrets to martial arts, but we'll see how that goes. But please do subscribe to the channel. If you like this idea, let me know by subscribing, vote with your feet, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, this is the first video on Black Belt Barrister Off the Record, because I've had a lot of people say, why don't I do a channel that is entirely dedicated to politics and my own views? And there seems to be a bit of a blur at the moment between what I call my main channel, Black Belt Barrister, and Black Belt Secrets, where I've said I'll give you my views, but Black Belt Secrets started as a martial arts channel. So I'm now in this rock and a hard place. So do I keep the politics off Black Belt Barrister? Do I put them on Black Belt Secrets? Or do I just do a Black Belt Barrister Off the Record and tell you everything that I really think? Because at the moment, I think the UK political system is an absolute nightmare. It's in turmoil. And I don't personally think that it is really devoting and developing the thoughts and the feelings of the nation. That is genuinely what I think here. And nothing could be further exemplary of that than the justice system and the punishments that are handed out for various things. For example, we have this 20-year-old here who was driving 120 miles an hour on the motorway. He failed to stop. He caused millions of pounds in damage. He crashed. Several police were injured. Obviously, lots of police cars were smashed up. And guess what his sentence was? 14 months in a young offenders institution. Now, a young offenders institution can be for anyone up to 21 years old, but adult prison can be from when you're an adult at 18 years old. So, meanwhile, Lucy Connolly is still in prison for 2.5 years for a tweet, albeit a reprehensible tweet. Nobody argues that she shouldn't have said what she said, but she's in prison for 2.5 years. It's been denied on the rules. Now, I don't blame the judge. Now, this is off the record, so this really is what I think. Now, off the record, you know, you can't really blame the judge because the judge was following the guidelines and the guidelines said that was fine. And so that was that. But at the same time, is it really what the public wants? Now, the judges are not there to decide what the public wants. Judges are there to follow the law, follow the rules, and the guidelines set out by the Sentencing Council. And so that's what they decided. But meanwhile, we have this guy, again, following the guidelines, because if you take every case by itself, that's where they end up. Now, we also have the recent guy burning the Quran, who has now been convicted of a public order offence. Do I agree with burning the Quran? Of course not. Well, I hope it's obvious that I don't agree with that. It may not have been obvious, I don't know, but off the record here, I don't agree with that. I do think that is a horrible thing to do. But should it be criminalised? No, I don't think it should, because if that is an absolutely bold statement for somebody to make, it's their place to make it. Just like if you don't want your own free speech curtailed and squashed, we shouldn't be squashing that of others, and we shouldn't be stopping what they can do. But at the same time, we've got this argument as to, you know, is this now a blasphemy law? Because we specifically cut out all of those things that could be labelled as blasphemy. So I don't think that's working either. But also, whilst we're off the record and whilst we are on the subject, and I feel like I've moved to the couch, in case you haven't noticed, so I can actually tell you exactly what I think here. I don't really think that what we have in Parliament at the moment is really fulfilling the purpose, which is to represent constituents' views in Parliament. Why do I say that? Because of the way that MPs are elected. If you look up first past the post system, etc., to result in a vast majority of Labour MPs out of the 650 that we have there, I do not think, I genuinely, hand on heart, do not think that we have the vast majority and the majority of views from around the country represented in Parliament. I just don't think that that's the case. I think what we have is a supermajority following one party's ideological causes down a particular path, doing certain things, which is cutting out elements of free speech because they don't like it. It's putting responsibility onto employers because they feel that they should take all of the responsibility, and that should be additional costs. That should be being responsible for third-party harassment, which is comments made by third parties that make somebody subjectively feel harassed. They're blaming the employer for that. So if you're in a pub and if you are the employee of the pub and you hear someone else say something that you don't like, you can blame your employer. The employer is responsible for a customer harassing you. That's just nonsense. It's utterly ridiculous. But that is what is now in this employment rights bill. That's what we have there. The pub banter, the anti-banter clause within that bill. And I think that's ridiculous as well. But then also we have the policies on migration. Now, obviously, some people that come to this country following the legal routes for migration, skilled migration, working here, following the rules, they do a lot of good for this country. And also, some people that come here deserve and desperately need help. I personally know people. I've known people for more than 20 years that I know that they came through those routes. They were fleeing countries because they were war-torn, they were fearful for their life. They came here, they've made a life here, they contribute to society, etc. But as it happens, they also disagree with a lot of the rules and what's happening with this illegal migration for those coming from France. So it's much like the trans debate. Now, I'm not, people might think I am. I'm not anti-trans. But at the same time, you cannot argue for one right that is the detriment to the rights of everybody else. So you can't argue that the rights of very, very few should override all the rights of women. But at the same time, that is what we get a lot of people lobbying for. And we had the Supreme Court judgment, which absolutely made it clear cut, but then we still have this huge debate. And I think that, but for the fact that there'd be a huge revolt from the public, I think Parliament, this current Parliament, as in this current government, would push for those rules and push for that law. And with a supermajority, they'd probably get it. But for the fact that I think that they know that there'd be a huge revolt from the general public. So I think we are in a really difficult position at the moment. This is why I've been talking about politics. And this is why I think the more I've talked about politics on my main channel, I feel like I do want to spend more time talking about pure law and not politics there. Just like on my second channel, which was actually my first channel, but now my second largest channel, Black Belt Secrets, I turned to be more about my personal views on those things. I now sort of feel that I want to turn that back to sports, fitness, and martial arts. Potentially, if this channel here, I'm recording this before even setting up this channel, but the channel that I think I'll put this on is off the record, so please do subscribe to it. As I said at the outset, please do subscribe. If this channel gets off the ground, maybe I'll move all of this here and put these views here. So secrets can go back to martial arts, my main channel can stick to law, and this off the record can be all of the political stuff here. Doesn't matter really to me where you watch it, so long as you watch it. And so I really think we are in this position at the moment, where this government is not representing the views of those around the country. And it's exemplified to me in the last few days, somewhere that we holiday, and I use the term as a verb, somewhere that we holiday now. We did used to rent out the same apartment almost every, well, 2 or 3 apartments that we would rent out every year in the same sort of place. And they've all sold. And then we look at the area and lots of them have sold up now for 2 reasons that have been cited to me. One is the second home demand or apartment let demand has absolutely crashed through the floor in certain areas because of taxes and all sorts of other things. But also they've moved migrants into those areas. And so they are now overrun essentially, and they feel that the demand has dropped because of the state of those areas. And so this is having a detrimental effect across the country. And there are certain areas that we've been to that I see a huge change in numbers in those areas. And I do see these changes in those areas. You can actively, visibly see the changes in those areas. And when it comes to government policy on what they're doing, stopping the boats and smashing the gangs, they may well be doing work further up the line. I get that. That is an unseen task, if you like, much like you don't see the work of MI5, you don't see the work of MI6, but trust me, it is going on around you. There's been certain elements of work that I know of that have involved those services, and you would never see it. And so this does go on around you. And part of the reason, I suspect, may be because of some of these headlines, I don't know if they're true or not, but the headlines read about holiday let owners facing a triple whammy. I'll link the article below. Airbnb owners are set to face a triple whammy of taxes as the governments are increasingly treating them as walking ATMs, according to a senior Tory MP. Kevin Hollerake, Shadow Housing Minister, criticising ministers for hitting short-term let owners with little-known licensing fees when they're already paying double council tax. From the 1st of April, all English councils were given the power to charge 100% council premium on second homes, and more than 230 chose to implement the charge. And the new legislation has included the scope for governments to introduce a registration scheme to regulate holiday lets to ensure that they are recorded with councils, which is going to lead to increasing fees, increasing charges like a licensing charge, hundreds of pounds a year. And so this is going to hit these holiday let places. So this is just another reason that it's killing these markets. And therefore, because they are just that little bit too much, lots of those, I've noticed, there's dozens of these places that you would otherwise have rented out as a holiday let in those areas. They're all being sold. And I suspect, well, I know for a fact, because I've spoken to one of them who sold it on to somebody who is now, they are disappointed, who is now going to let it for migrants. They are going to sign a contract to have migrants come and stay there. So these, what were holiday lets, are now being let as migrant places. So instead of, they said that they're going to stop the use of the hotels. That much is true, but they're moving them into essentially holiday lets, which you and I would have spent thousands of pounds to go on holiday to these places. They're now being given for free to asylum seekers who are coming here. Now, again, usual caveat, some people deserve the help and need the help and so on. But at the same time, they're going essentially to live permanently on holiday in quite literally the building that you and I would rent to go on holiday near the sea somewhere. And I find this utterly outrageous, but this is what's going on right now. And this is not just this government. This is decades worth of government building up to this point. I think it can only be that there is a plan behind this, and this is genuinely what they are intending to happen. This cannot be by accident. It has to be by design. Otherwise, they would absolutely 100% do something about it. That's what I really think. That's where a lot of the frustration comes from, not just from me, from a lot of people. And so a lot of people, being British about it, don't want to complain. And just like, bless her for her phrase, the Queen's phrase, never complain and never explain. A very British thing. We don't often complain about things. You can be frustrated about something, and instead of complain, many British will apologise for it. And so I think this is very much part of a plan. And I think it is certainly not something that people fought for many years ago. Much like when I did a few years stint as a voluntary police officer when I was 18 onwards, just a bit of worldly experience. When you first hear the police radio, there's a car theft, there's a burglary, there's a robbery, there's a stabbing, there's an assault, there's this, there's a domestic, there's that. All in the area that you live, and you think, wow, all of this is going on in this area. Literally a stone's throw. When you're called to jobs on the street that you live, or around the corner from where you live, or around the corner from where you went to school, or where you go shopping, or whatever, and you're called to these places, and you go to those jobs, and there's people fighting and kidnapping. And for example, one job, this will horrify you, but it's the truth. And it's all sort of related to my off-the-record talk about government and policies and what's going on and what they're doing about it. One of the jobs I know of, not me, but officers were called to a supermarket where a child had gone missing, and they found the child in the bathroom, covered literally head to toe in religious garments. So you couldn't see the child. And they took the religious garments off. The child had a head shaved, completely, her head was completely shaved. So you'd probably struggle to recognize the child anyway. I mean, baldness changes the way somebody looks. I think somebody that knew me way back when I had hair, maybe 10 years ago or whatever, maybe not quite recognize me now. Maybe they do if they stare at me long enough. But she had her head completely shaved and she was covered over head to toe in religious garments. And so you could not see who she was. And she was that close to being kidnapped by another lady, by the way. This wasn't by a man or anything. She was found in the ladies' toilets with a lady covered in these garments, and she was found just at that moment before they're about to come out. They would have walked out, no one would have seen a thing. And so much of the debate around policies and things like that, you need to bear these things in mind, because not everyone understands that those are certain things that can happen that you may not know about. So these policies, for example, the migrant policies with thousands upon thousands of migrants coming across, I don't have anything inherently against those people. It is the mere fact and the statistical near certainty that some of them will be coming here with nefarious intent. They will have criminal backgrounds, and some of them may well be terrorists. Out of the thousands and thousands that will come across, it is almost statistically certain that some of them will be with a criminal background or even a terrorist background. And because of where they are from, that makes this extremely dangerous. So when it comes down to it, it does make you wonder, is this all part of a plan? Is it something that they have no intention to do anything about because it keeps happening? There's thousands and thousands more coming across. It does make you wonder whether it's part of a plan. And a lot of people now label this up as right-wing. It isn't. I am certainly not right-wing, but a lot of what I say people now label as right-wing because they see anything as not being left of centre as right-wing, and that's just not the case. So do subscribe to the channel here if you like the idea of an off-the-record channel. This is Black Belt Barrister Off the Record, signing off. Please do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.